Uh, okay, here we are. Well, welcome to another episode of Supercharged Sunday with me, Emily McHugh, your Supercharged host and coach, and my wonderful extra special guest today, Savvy Leigh. Welcome, Savvy.
Hi, thank you so much. I appreciate being on the show.
It is so wonderful to have Savvy on. Savvy is usually the person behind the scenes, behind the camera, making things happen. So today it's wonderful to put her front and center so we can benefit from all the tips and insights that she has as a professional photographer. And her genre is wedding photography. She's going to tell us all about that. But we're so excited to have you, Savvy. And so welcome on. And you're joining us, you're coming to us from Houston today, Houston, Texas.
Yes. Yeah. So right now I'm actually living in Utah, but I'm visiting my family here in Houston. So that's where I'm at right now is my parents' house in Houston.
Wonderful, excellent. And I have to tell you all, Savvy is an extra special person because she is also my web designer on emilymchugh.com, and she made the magic happen and brought it to life. So I really appreciate Savvy's talent and her skill and all of her expertise. So, Savvy, how did you get into the world of photography? What attracted you to photography?
Well, I've always been very visually based. Pretty much with anything. I love ASL, and you mentioned website design, photography. I've just always been very artistically and visually geared. And my brother-in-law had one of those, fancy DSLR cameras, and he was going away for 2 years. And so he told me, I probably won't use my camera in the next few years. Here, you can just have it. And before I even took a single photo, I was like, oh, I think like this is what I want to do. This is the career I want to make. This just fits in so perfectly with everything that I already love. Weddings, especially, I had been, planning my own wedding since I was like a little girl and was obsessed with them. And once I got married, it was kind of that sad thing where it's like, oh, now I can't look at wedding dresses anymore. And now I can't plan out all these fancy wedding receptions and everything.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of serendipitous when he left. He gave me his camera, and I was like, I'm going to really learn how to use this thing. And then I can kind of live out my wedding dreams vicariously and focus on creating art, which is what I love to do anyway.
Yeah,
So I started taking classes, so many online courses I can't even count. And here I am now.
that is great. And then so, but for you, the wedding was from your own experience, wanting to get married and so forth. But what have you found? Is it as I guess what I'm trying to say is it as fun doing someone else's wedding as your own, or is it more fun?
Absolutely. It's so much fun. Because there's also a ton of variety when you're, just getting married yourself. You're like, oh my gosh, like you only really get to do this once in your entire lifetime. It has to be absolutely perfect. There's so much stress and pressure. But when it's someone else's wedding, they get to have a design, an idea, a theme that's all their own that you didn't have to stress or plan over or anything. And I get to decide like how to make that look the most beautiful I possibly can. So I don't know. I mean, obviously, I loved my wedding and everything, but it has been so much fun getting to see how other people take the concept of wedding and turn it into so many different ideas. It's truly awesome. Like it's the perfect creative outlet for me.
Well, you do such an amazing job. I love your photos when you post them on Instagram and you do all these Instagram and on Facebook. And it's so dreamy how you do the lighting, how every picture looks like a fairy tale. And I know that
Thank you.
doesn't come by accident and how you do this. So I look forward to today. You're going to talk with us about supercharging your photos and pro tips on how we can have more effective photos on social media. So today everyone's a photographer of sorts, and we come on here and we're trying to do our thing. So we look forward to hearing your insights onto how we can do it better and more effectively and learn from the pros. So take it away. Tell
Awesome.
us how to do this, Savvy, please.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I recently started getting more into social media. I will admit at first it was kind of overwhelming to me. It did not seem like a fun thing for me to do to post on Instagram all the time. It was more of a chore that I kind of tried to like force myself to do every single day. And I just thought, this is not sustainable. And I really do think Instagram, depending on your target audience, I guess, Instagram is a huge platform for my target audience, which is going to be, you know, mostly young couples who are using Instagram. But I will say, probably the majority of my bookings actually come from Instagram. And I've tried to develop, I've tested out a couple different strategies myself, and I've tried to develop a very easy way where I can not so much put Instagram on autopilot necessarily, but I already know what the plan is for all of my future posts before I even go into it. So it just makes the process so much simpler. So it's something I'm still working on too, definitely, but I'm excited to, you know, share with you what it is that my thought process behind my own Instagram and the things that I'm trying to implement.
Yes, definitely.
So the first thing I guess I wanted to bring attention to, and I feel like photographers really focus in on this sometimes a little bit too much, but is how your Instagram looks as a grid from the outside. When someone first goes to your profile, how that original grid looks. And the best way to get a cohesive looking grid is to decide on a pattern of your posts. So here, let me see if I can share my screen real quick, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna just start, let's see. Seeing if I can hop over to Instagram so I can show you guys a little bit of what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Let me know if you can see my screen, Emily.
No, it says screen broadcast Zoom. It says,
I've got
is
a
it
little
you're viewing? Okay, you're sharing screen. Okay. Yeah, it's coming together now. Yeah, I'm seeing
Okay,
your
perfect.
screen.
So are you able to see the Instagram right now?
Yes, I see Savvy Leigh Photography.
Perfect, perfect. So one of the easiest patterns for a grid that I personally use right now is to do a pattern of every other photo. So for me, I do a pattern of like a close-up detail shot and a person, a detail shot and a person, a detail shot and a person. And you can see I kind of try to follow this pattern as much as I can going down. So when you look at it, it kind of comes together, has a more cohesive feel, but you don't have to do, you know, close up and person. You can do things like photos of your customer, then switch to photos of your product. Just have at least two different categories of posts, basically, when you're thinking about your photos, two different categories that you can switch back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on. A lot of people will also do like a photo and then a quote block. I'm sure you've seen on Instagram, like, you know, just a plain color with a quote in it. And then the next post will be a photo of something like that. So let me show you guys what some of the Instagram people that I follow personally that I think do a great job of this.
Mm-hmm.
So this girl, she is a wedding photographer as well. I follow a lot of wedding photographers, so okay. It should be no surprise here. But she also does something very similar where she has a detail shot, a person, a detail shot, a person, and she kind of flips back and forth all the way down.
Right.
So that way nothing gets super overwhelming, nothing gets too cluttered looking. She utilizes a lot of negative space, which I love. And I'll talk about negative space a little bit more recently. But I do want you guys to notice the negative space that she has in her images. Nothing is overwhelming in her images, especially look at the on the left here, that ring box. That image by itself is like really simple. There's not a ton of it going on.
Mm-hmm.
But in the grid, it looks awesome to be paired with all these other images. It kind of gives your eyes a break. You don't feel overwhelmed by anything you're looking at here. So I think she does a really great job of doing like close-up detail shot, person. And again, depending on what your industry is, what your market is, you can decide on the two different categories yourself. I think just making sure you have two different varieties that you can switch back and forth is the main thing. And then let's see. This girl is a social media marketer, and she kind of does the quotes a lot. So yeah, you see here, she also does kind of a one off type of thing where it's a photo, then a quote, then a photo, then a quote. And again, she's using a lot of negative space in there and making it very, very simple, very easy to read. Just super, super easy to digest in bite-sized pieces. You could also do sets of 3. So Instagram is made so that it's rows of 3 when you look at the grid. So some more ideas, sets of 3, you could have a photo of a person, a photo of your product, and then a quote. So for instance, let me look at this girl. She's another wedding photographer in my area. All right, we're gonna see lots of wedding photographers.
No, it's just great, Savvy. It's very helpful to see the examples.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, I was like, well, it's gonna be a lot of wedding stuff, but hopefully it'll be able to be applicable. You can kind of, change it in your mind to fit whatever industry you're in, whatever you need to.
Exactly.
But you can see this girl also, she has a pattern, and her pattern is of 3. She's got a landscape shot, no people. She's got a person shot, and then she's got a quote. And she kind of follows that pattern a little bit more too.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I think people get, sometimes the tendency is to get a little bit too hung up on following this pattern that you've created for yourself, like to exactness. And I think that is a mistake. I think you should follow the pattern the best that you can, but if you need to break the pattern every once in a while just to have something to post, go for it. It doesn't ruin the grid aesthetic, or even if it did, the individual posts are more important than the grid aesthetic.
Right. So you're kind of alternating between an overall aesthetic, but at the same time having some spontaneity where you can.
Right. Like, don't lose focus of what's important, which is having the followers that you already own think that your content is valuable and like your content. And then, sorry, I'm all over the place. I also think posting photos of yourself, or like if you have a team, a company, posting photos of your team members with something more personal is also really important. People like to connect to people. They don't connect to businesses. They connect to other people. So I try really hard in my Instagram grid to make sure that in one of the first 6 photos, my face is there. So this one, it was my anniversary, so it's a little bit different of a photo. You can't tell it's me, but that bottom left corner in the gold dress, that's actually me. And then here, yeah. So that's a photo of me, and it has a personal story about me too, me and AJ.
And you know what, Savvy? I really like that idea, because sometimes you're not sure whose Instagram you're really following, like who is the person posting all these things. So it's really important to kind of show up in your own feed and be present.
Right, exactly.
You know who you are. Exactly. Right.
And give people something to connect to so they know who it is behind them. So yeah, me personally, I like to post a photo of myself at least once every 6 photos, have it in those first 2 rows somewhere. There's another one. Oh, and then this one on Mother's Day, it was dancing. So you can see even the photos of me, sometimes you can't even tell it's me scrolling through. But my followers are going to see a photo of me talking about a personal story that they themselves can connect to. And I think that really helps to build trust in your brand identity as well. I know some people that will try and make a photo of themselves once every 3 posts. So it's always like on the first line. But I think it's just up to you, however much content you have of yourself that you could post. Don't be afraid to post personal stories on your business. People like that. People want that.
Definitely. As a part of the branding process as well.
Yes, absolutely. Let me see if I can.
And you have on here Charlotte. Charlotte. I'm calling you Charlotte because you're moving to Charlotte. So
yeah.
Yes, I was going to ask you. So it says Charlotte photographer. So that means that you are moving to.
Yeah, so I'm moving to Charlotte, North Carolina in January. I've already moved over all of my social media. So if you look at my social media right now, it seems as if I'm already living in Charlotte. And because I book weddings, which are done so far in advance, people usually have about a year-long engagement, in which time I will be in Charlotte a year from now. I wanted to kind of start getting my clientele up and running and have a base already set for me from when I arrived. So I've already started taking inquiries for Charlotte, which has been super nice and super awesome. And, they found me on Instagram by searching things like Charlotte Wedding Photographer.
That is so amazing. That's so amazing.
I love having the name as your area and product, because that means people searching for that. people searching Charlotte wedding photographer, I pop up because that's technically my name on Instagram.
That is really cool. So no, but are you willing to also travel? So I know that you're focusing on a region, but as a wedding photographer, how do you delineate your territory or expand it? Just
So I do offer travel for sure, although that's not what my brand is like focused on, I would say. I kind of like being able to know the venues beforehand and know, oh, I've been here before. This spot is going to be amazing for photos. I know the wedding planner they're working with. She's great. I kind of like that. I do enjoy traveling a whole lot, and I do travel quite frequently. Actually, almost half of my weddings, I would say, are travel weddings. But when I market myself, I market for the location I'm in. I think especially too, because when people search for something, they search for their location. They don't search for like a traveling wedding photographer, though they might hire one. What they're actually searching for is like their location wedding photographer. So I think location still plays a big role, even if you are traveling. It still can play a big role in helping get you in front of the audience that you need, regardless.
Yes.
Okay. And then for the images on your post that you make on social media, I mentioned negative space earlier, and that's something I myself really, really struggle with. I tend to have too cluttered of images. I'm really trying to like simplify it and get more negative space in my images. But I think it's especially easy to run into that problem when you have things like quotes or words on your images, if you're in that kind of market. I mean, mine don't usually have a lot of quotes or words on the images, but a lot of people will use that as one of their formats. And I think negative space is key. It needs to be absolutely simple. They should not have to search for your message in the post. They should be able to immediately see the post, immediately read the message, and not feel like, whoa, what am I even looking at here? So I try really hard not to have words overlap with a person's face if I am going to have words on a photo. So like if this frame of me in the laptop right now is like what I'm going to post on social media, I would put the words off to the side so they're not cutting into me or like cutting into the frame or anything behind me. So just trying to get as much negative space as possible. Yes. I always think it's good to remind people consistently of who you are and what you do. I think a lot of business owners tend to fall into the mindset of like, oh, if you scroll through my website and you scroll through my Instagram, it has all the information customers will ever need. And it probably does. But the truth of the matter is customers very rarely are scrolling just through like your Instagram to find out what it is that you do. Your post is one in hundreds of posts that they're about to scroll through on their homepage. You want to make sure it is clear, it is bold, and it tells them exactly who you are and what you do. So that's why I also really like the photo of me and myself. And you can look at Instagram insights as you like start implementing different strategies, testing them out, see what the type of stuff that does well, see the type of stuff that doesn't do well. I noticed with myself, my most popular posts are always posts about me, like me talking about my life. They have nothing to do with wedding photography at all even, but those are the ones that consistently have the most likes, the most comments, the most interaction, engagement. So I try to keep that up as much as I can.
Yeah.
If I don't know, have you read the book Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller?
No, I haven't. Say that again. Building a Story Brand.
Yeah, Building a Story Brand by, I think Donald Miller is his name.
Donald Miller. Okay.
It's a really short book. It's a really easy read. It's kind of almost like a workbook more than it is an actual book because he gives you steps to do along the way. Yeah. But that is a fabulous, fabulous book to read.
I will put it on the list. I will put it, and thank you. I love when our guests, the Supercharged Sunday guests, share books that really highlight something. So this is really fantastic. We'll definitely highlight that book.
Yes, it's amazing. And so Building a Story Brand, pretty much the entire book is about clarifying and simplifying your message. So he says in there, a reasonably intelligent 10-year-old should be able to like, I'm going to apply it to social media. A reasonably intelligent 10-year-old should be able to see your social media posts and tell you what it is that you do and what it is that you offer. Like it should not be complicated for people to understand or figure out. And he uses the phrase, if you confuse, you lose. And so I always try to keep that in my mind when I'm posting. How can I make this as simple and clear as possible? I want a 10-year-old to be able to understand what it is I'm trying to say.
That is very helpful, and it's great guidance because it's so easy to get lost. You can say, well, this would be cool to post, and you post it, but it doesn't have anything to do with anything, or you haven't tied it in. And that's really, really quite the challenge to keep that focus. And so this is really very good, great insights
Yeah.
to this. Yeah.
Absolutely. And especially what we're talking about with your post being one of hundreds on their home feed that pops up randomly, it shouldn't be any mental effort for them to jump into the mindset that you want them to be in. If they're having to be like, who is this person again? What is she talking about again? I can't, why did I follow her in the first place? I can't remember. I think each post should like be a reminder. Oh yeah, this is what she does. This is what she provides or sells or whatever. This is what it's supposed to do for me.
And this is why I care.
Yeah, exactly. This is why I care. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I just recently started implementing that I don't have a ton of followers on social media. I will say that I do get a lot of my bookings from social media, but I do not have a lot of followers. One of the things that I started implementing recently that actually like grew my following up so much more than I had anticipated was I started writing blog posts, how-to articles. So I thought about like my ideal client for me, you know, brides getting married, planning their wedding. What's something that they would find valuable, that they would find helpful? I would write a blog post about it. And then for my captions on social media, I can take one blog post and just copy like a sentence or two or a paragraph of that blog post and use that as my caption in my social media post. So it takes like no effort whatsoever. I just, today I'm going to talk about the timeline for your wedding reception. Let me go to that blog post I wrote about the timeline for my wedding reception and just copy and paste that paragraph, and that's my caption. Awesome. And then I can do a call to action at the end of each post too and say, hey, if you want to learn more about this, I have a post on it. You can check it out in the link in my blog. So you drive traffic to your website as well.
That is wonderful. And what kind of photo do you tend to use with those types of how-to blog post?
So it kind of depends. I do try to choose a photo that is related to what I'm talking about. So for example, if I'm talking about ceremonies in the sunlight, I will choose a photo of a ceremony in the sunlight. But I don't necessarily put too much thought and effort into it, to be honest, because people who are not going to read the caption aren't going to read the caption anyway. They're just going to think it's a pretty photo and be reminded that I'm a wedding photographer, which is great. And people that do read the caption, hopefully are going to be more interested in the caption and the information that I'm providing for them.
So which comes first, the photo or the caption? Especially in this example of like a blog post or something, but even in general as well.
So for me, I choose the photo first. And I choose the photo based on what I was talking about earlier, where you could choose a pattern for your grid. I do that for my own self. So I just look at my Instagram grid and I think, okay, what does this next post have to be? What does the next photo have to do to fit into the pattern? Oh, this next post has to be a close-up detail shot or something. Then I will think, what is a blog post I've written that could relate to this photo that I've already chosen? Uh-huh. And so that's when I get my caption that hopefully relates to the blog post caption that hopefully relates to the photo, and I can pair them together. But I choose the photo first. And I think, well, for me, because I'm a photographer, like everything is visual, I think like following the pattern and like choosing good photos is a bit more important in a visually based industry. So I'm not quite sure like how that would morph compared to other industries. But for me personally, yes, I choose the photo first, and I put a lot of emphasis on what that photo is going to look like, how it's going to fit into the grid, and if it speaks to my ideal clients as well. So when choosing photos to post, I always try to put out what I want to come back to me. So for instance, I love taking photos of the couple by themselves. I don't super love family photos. That's just not my thing. I'm not about it. So I'll never post family photos. I'll post tons of photos of the couple. If I love flowers, I'm going to try to post more flowers, because then my clients who also love flowers are going to see that, and they're going to have a connection with me on that. So I really try to put out my ideal client in front of my posts as much as I possibly can. If there is someone who has just been an amazing client to me, I'm like, I want more people like this person, I will post about them multiple times, because I want to put out on social media what I want to get back.
And
So
Savvy, right there, that is such a essential point that you're making. Putting out what you want back, it just attracts more of the same. Like you'll attract more clients like
yes,
that, more weddings of that sort. And it's such a fundamental point or strategic point to have, point of view or position to take. So thank you for
yeah.
highlighting that because it really. So when you were like your ideal client, how would you define your ideal client?
Oh, that is a really big question. So I've recently taken a business course, and they had us get super, super like tiny honed into our ideal client, where we basically created this actual person and actual character in our mind and named them. So my ideal clients are named Sophia and Declan in my mind, because that's just how it went.
Okay.
But like for me, for instance, I do love flowers, and so do my ideal clients. In my mind, they love flowers. They're going to have huge overflowing arrangements at their ceremony and in their reception. They're going to put a lot of thought and care into the flowers that they choose. They're going to probably like a little bit brighter, like bolder colors. So when I post, I try to think of things like that. If I have a photo of a floral arrangement, I'm like, perfect. This speaks exactly to what I want to get. This hopefully, this speaks exactly to my ideal client. This is a great thing to post. If I have something that is, I don't know, maybe they didn't even have a bouquet or something. Maybe they just had like a single rose. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what I want to attract. That's not the ideal client of Sophia and Declan in my mind. And so I may not post that photo because it doesn't speak out to my ideal client.
So tell us a little bit about Sophia and Declan. I'm really curious to hear a little bit more about them so we can attract more of them.
It seems really silly. It does. It sounds so silly.
It's
But it
not.
has helped me a lot in deciding things to post. So I went through Sophia and Declan, with the ultimate dream. So putting aside reality for a second, like your ideal clients, the perfect wedding that I could do if there were no barriers in the way or anything. It would be like huge, roomy, white venue, outside, outdoor ceremony. I love the outdoors and everything. And then from there, you kind of narrow it down to like, well, what is Sophia and Declan like? In my mind, they like trying out all the different craft beers around Charlotte. So with that made up knowledge, if I want to post something about craft beers, then in my mind, I'm like, oh, well, this could actually connect to my ideal client, even though it's not about wedding photography. If I know my ideal client well enough, I can post things that still connect with them, even outside of this industry.
Right.
So yeah, that and the ideal client, like Sophia and Declan, sounds so silly. They're not real people, but
The Declan
Sophia,
is really, especially the Declan. I'm like, where did he come from?
yeah, kind of eccentric. But eccentric was a little bit also what kind of goes into it with
Yes.
my ideal client. I like a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But they're constantly changing as well. Every experience I have where I'm like, oh, I want more of this, I then attribute it to my ideal client, Or if I find something where I'm like, wasn't a super fan of that, then I'm like, okay, let me make sure that that's not what I'm putting out,
Mm-hmm.
But it's constantly changing. It's constantly morphing and shifting. But I try to having them named and as people in my mind make it a lot easier for me in my head to be like, not just would my vague ideal client somewhere out there like this post, but like would Sophia and Declan, the people I've created, like this post? Like these specific people, would they like this post or not?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little
Wow.
bit. I'm still diving into
I
getting
like
super
that.
deep into that.
I
But
really
it has
like
been very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think of the problems that Sophia and Declan would have, and what problems can I solve for them? What problems would they like to see answered? Like, what can I do for them that's going to be helpful for them, that's going to keep me in their mind?
Give us a couple more examples of that, because this is so intriguing. How because it really does help to unwind the thought process.
Yeah.
Like
So
yeah.
one of the posts that I made, so I knew when I was planning for my wedding, I was very overwhelmed at the amount of stuff to do. There's things that like you have to plan that you didn't even know existed or had to plan or anything like that. In my mind, my ideal clients, Sophia and Declan, they want their day to be about them. They don't want to be stressed about planning. They truly want it to be about their relationship and the time they can spend together and how meaningful that time is to them. So I created a wedding planning checklist because in my mind, that's something that they could use to be like, okay, this is super easy. We can go through this checklist. And then when the wedding day comes, we can really focus on each other and be in the moment with each other instead of all the random items we didn't even know existed in the checklist. But other things that I might do is like how to find the perfect wedding planner, because that's something that Sophia and Declan probably would want to know, is how to find the perfect wedding planner so they didn't even have to do the checklist by themselves in the first place, So there's so much that you can do for it. And I think it is better to try something and have it fail than it is to just wait around for the absolute perfect match to talk about or to write about or to post about. There's a quote that sounds a little bit silly. I'm going to cuss, but there's a quote that sounds a little bit silly, but I like live my life by it basically. And it's, if something is worth doing, then it's worth half-assing, which at first you're like, seriously, like you're just going to half-ass something worth doing? But me especially, I get into this horrible perfectionist mindset. If it's not perfect, I can't put it out there. If it's not absolutely speaking to my ideal client, then I can't post it or make a blog post about it or anything like that. And so I just decided a while ago, if it's worth doing, it's worth half-assing. I'm just going to make it, put it out there, see what happens. It is better for it to be out there and not perfect than it is to always strive for perfection and never actually do anything with it.
So true.
So I've tried that. Like I started with Reels too. I just recently started with Instagram Reels. I think I only have like 3 or 4 out there right now or something like that. But I gave myself a limit on how many times I could redo the reel. I'm like, I can only redo it up to 3 times and then I just have to post it as is. I won't allow myself to get like caught up in the perfectionist mindset.
You can spend all day
it's better that it's done.
Exactly. You really can go on and on and on, and putting those parameters and the limits on the time and so forth for the return you're going to get is very important. That's
right.
We have to have those boundaries in there.
Well, and it helps so much too, because I think it helps you kind of get rid of your fear of perfectionism as well. I'm not really afraid to post a video where I look stupid anymore because I've already done it, which makes me more confident to post basically anything. The original quote I think I heard was like about that original quote was applied to laundry, and they're like, if something's worth doing, it's worth half-assing. It is better to have 4 folded shirts in your laundry pile than to have no folded shirts in your laundry pile. Just do it. And most things you can even tweak after the fact as you can understand like how to improve them. But it is better to get something done than it is to wait around and tweak things to perfection for eternity.
Absolutely. And as a professional photographer, Savvy, what are some of the things that you see, I guess, amateurs do when they take their photos and post them that they really need to stop doing, like right now?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good question. I think, well, and everyone's going to have a difference because it's art, everyone's going to like different things and think different things are good. But for me personally, I really don't like overly like saturated or edited photos. I think when people first start out, they put so much time into editing and it comes out looking totally unnatural, like nothing you would even see in real life. So sometimes that's the trap that some people fall into, which personally I'm not a huge fan of, but you know, I don't know, maybe somebody out there is a big fan of that.
Yes, yes, yes.
But yeah, me personally not about it. But there are some tips that even you, like posting photos, like taking photos on your cell phone of yourself to post to social media, can easily follow. So one of the main ones, like I always tell people, is if you're outside, watch the way the light is hitting you. I think a lot of people, I guess this is one of my like pet peeves. And again, it could be done right. Like rules are meant to be broken. But this is one of my pet peeves, is when I see people who have like leaves or something in front of their face and the sun shines down through the leaves and leaves all these weird shadows all over their face. And to me, it looks very distracting and very cluttered. So one of the first things I always tell people that you can do super easy, just taking a cell phone photo, is if you're outside, just put the sun behind you. So that will automatically create shade and a shadow over your face, so you won't have any weird shadows or splotches all over your skin. So you just want to make sure the sun is behind you. And that will automatically fix so many lighting problems just right there in and of itself.
So is that true for like any kind of light? So if you have if the sun is behind you, does it mean that any kind of light is behind you? Or it just depends on if you're outdoors versus
indoors. So like if you're indoors, I actually will say usually like the opposite. If you have a big window,
yeah,
I usually will go stand in front of the window so that the light is coming onto me from the window, because the window kind of diffuses it. And I guess it's depending on the time of day, the sun's not shining like directly into your face. It's being kind of splayed out from this window. So indoors, I say stand in front of a window or use a ring light. You know, people have like those fancy ring lights. I like those. So either use a ring light or stand in front of a window. And then if you're outdoors, put your back to the sun. And I think like lighting is a big deal in photos. I think what a lot of people attribute to editing, are like, oh, that's a good photo, they must have really like edited it, or the camera was really good, or whatever. I think a lot of the times it's that the photographer was paying attention to light.
Frozen. I think we're slightly frozen, Savvy. I don't know if you're coming through, or maybe I think it's your screen. Maybe that's frozen. Okay. I'm gonna turn off my video for a second.
And that's what actually made it photo. Sorry, my screen was.
Savvy, are you hearing me? Because I wasn't.
Now you're back. My screen completely froze for a second there, so I wasn't sure what happened.
Yeah, I just turned off my video just to kind of conserve on, so that you can go ahead and just talk. Focus it on you.
Okay. Should I turn off my video as well?
No. You keep going. You keep going.
Okay. Trying to remember what I was saying. Oh yeah, lighting. I think once you have the lighting down, then you can focus on like making yourself look good in front of the camera, which is also, I'll teach you guys a few like quick tips to make yourself look as flattering as possible in the camera. So you know how the stereotypical like teenage girl thing is to hold your phone way up high and look at the phone for a selfie? That is because a high angle up high looks so much better. Your face looks a lot slimmer when you're looking up into the camera instead of down into the camera. It might give you like some extra double chins you're not loving. So I always recommend, even filming, taking a photo of yourself, just make sure you're at a slightly higher angle so that you're slightly looking up into the camera when you take the photo. And also eye contact, I think, is really what's the word? Like undervalued. I think eye contact is really important, especially in social media posts. So people, whether they really realize it or not, I think really psychologically connect to eye contact. It feels more like you're looking at an actual person. There really is a connection there. And so I remember when I was saying I try to make a photo of myself like once every 6 photos or something like that. I try to make as many of those photos of myself as photos of me looking at the camera, giving the camera direct eye contact as possible, because I really do think it makes a difference and it relates to people in a different way. So kind of go to like cell phone pose, I would say, is to hold the camera up high, look into it, make sure that I'm looking directly at the camera. And then I always twist my waist. So if you think about like a rag or something, if you're gonna like twist one side of the rag, it becomes skinnier in the middle because you kind of get that more hourglass figure. So I always try to point my feet on a 45 and then square my shoulders towards the camera. So it kind of, you can't see it in this camera angle, unfortunately, but it gives that twist in your waist that is going to give you more of an hourglass figure and make you look a little bit slimmer. So that usually is my go-to. Feet at a 45, twist into the camera, look at an up angle, and make eye contact. And that's just the one that I like. I tend to feel like I like the way that I look a lot in my photos when I do that. And then smiling. I know some people have like the stereotypical, you know, camera smile, where it's like the little kid in elementary school getting their picture taken and they're like baring their teeth at the camera. So as silly as it seems, I try to squint my eyes when I smile, because I notice when I am genuinely laughing or smiling, me personally, when I'm genuinely laughing or smiling, I squint my eyes, like my eyes kind of close. And not only that, but I have space in between my teeth when I laugh, like, ha ha ha, there's space in between. So whenever I am trying to look like I have a genuine smile for the camera, that's what I do. I squint my eyes and I put a little bit of space in between my teeth. So it looks, at least in my mind, I don't know, maybe you guys are looking at this and I'm like, you're crazy, it doesn't look like that. But to me, it looks a little bit more genuine that way. So that's kind of the little tricks that I play in my own head to try and trick myself into getting a more genuine smile. And then I'm sure a lot of girls do this, you know, a lot of girls will pose standing up with one leg, like kind of cocked with the knee bent. That's a great way to kind of, you know, excuse me. That's a great way to like accentuate your figure. I always say, just make sure to bend the knee that's closest to the camera. Or if you're gonna put your hand on your hip, the hand that's closest to the camera. Any kind of bends are the ones that's gonna be close to the camera.
That's like the beauty pageant pose. The Miss America pose.
Yeah, beauty pageant, Miss America pose. Exactly.
And they all pose that way for a reason, because if you look at all pageants, Miss Universe, Miss World, whatever, they all have that way they stand, and there's a reason why they all stand that way.
Yeah, definitely. It comes from a place. It comes from wisdom, even if it, you know, however you take it. It came from these sorts of tips originally.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure.
And then I also think, you know, how we were just talking about like our ideal client and showcasing our ideal client, posting our ideal client. I also try to think to dress the way that I think would appeal to my ideal client when I post photos of myself. So if I'm wanting to get into more like luxury, high-end stuff, I might not post photos in a t-shirt, although I might, you know, never say never. But I'm going to try to make sure that most of the photos I put out there are going to be me dressed in more luxury type stuff that my ideal clients are probably wearing or buying. And I think, you know, subconsciously it kind of speaks to them like, we're in the same place. I can connect with you on all these different points. I know who you are. I can relate to you. So I personally will choose my outfits based on what I think the Sophia and Declan would like and relate to.
Wow. Especially Declan again, because I know his tastes have got to be really quite eclectic there. Absolutely.
Yeah, true. I imagine him in like a three-piece suit, and he's got the little like kind of chain pocket watch thing going.
Like Gatsby kind of guy. So do they have a last name? Huh?
Sorry. I said, yeah, didn't even consider that.
Yeah. Did you give them a last name by chance?
No, I didn't give them a last name. Although maybe I will one day. I don't know. I can't think of anything that feels just
Especially
right.
once they get married, they'll become Mr. and Mrs., so they will need that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Exactly.
so cool. So, Sappy, what else do we need to know? I mean, this is a lot of great insights, and it's like kind of like going back and really putting it together and applying it, because I really intend to apply what you're sharing today and see how that would make sense with what I like to post on Instagram versus not just what I like to post, but what does my ideal
What's
client
important to them to
them?
post. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I made a major shift in my that's what got me so many more followers recently, is that major shift between being like, let me just come up with a random caption to stick on this photo, but it wasn't actually helping anyone, it wasn't actually valuable to anyone. And I shifted my mindset and I was like, if it does not help or relate to my ideal clients, I will not post it. Every single post will be helpful to them, it will solve a problem of theirs, or it will relate to them in some way if it's like something about me personally. But I want it to be, I want my Instagram to be a helpful resource and not just a collage of pretty pictures. They can go on Pinterest for that. I need to be a step up above that.
That is definitely taking it to another level. And what I love about what you've said before, when you were talking about followers versus actual conversion, some people
Yeah.
mistakenly think that just because they have a lot of followers, they automatically are getting the conversions, and sometimes it could be farther from the truth. So what you're doing is really the ideal situation. You're getting your customers, you're getting real paid
Yes,
clients, and that's all that
exactly.
matters.
Well, for a long time, I felt very like ashamed and embarrassed at the lack of followers I had on Instagram, because I don't have a lot. I don't even, I think I'm like close to 500 right now. It's not a ton. But the business that I get, a lot of it comes from Instagram. And so I kind of was like, I guess I don't care. So my shift switched originally when I realized that a lot of my followers were other photographers, not potential brides. And I
Uh-huh.
realized all the followers that I were getting were still other photographers. And while I was like, okay, that's great that like other photographers are following me, I don't have this Instagram for other photographers. They're never going to hire me. I have this Instagram for potential brides. And so it really made me take a look at my Instagram, take a look at myself and be like, are the things I'm posting helpful for photographers, or are they helpful for
Mm.
brides?
Mhm.
Because I don't want to focus on being the connection point for photographers. And that's when I was like, no, I am going to make sure that my stuff speaks to brides specifically, and not just brides, that it speaks to Sophia and Declan. So when they see my stuff, and I think it really has, it showed incredible success just in this short time I've been doing it. I only started like a couple weeks ago. I've already gotten inquiries from amazing people that I'm like, this is who I want to
Wow.
work with.
That is so amazing and so inspiring to hear that, Savvy. It really makes a huge difference to have that mind shift. And it makes it
Yeah.
easier for you to post too, because then you have this focus, you have this real direction
Yeah.
that you're
Yes, exactly.
following.
That's why I said it's not necessarily on autopilot. Like I still have to think about what the next photo in the sequence is, choose it, and then think of a blog post I've already written that could connect to it. So it's not necessarily on autopilot, but like I'm no longer just posting every day for the sake of posting every day and then coming up with something random that would work as a caption. Everything I post is helpful in some way or relatable in some way. It drives traffic back to my website and it speaks to who I want it to speak to.
So how often do you post? Do you believe in posting daily? What is your posting schedule?
I would, sorry, excuse me. I would love to post daily. But like sometimes it just feels a little bit too draining for me. So I don't beat myself up if I don't post daily. I would say I try to post at least 3 times a week, like every other day, probably. But
Oh.
again, I don't beat myself up about it. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll make a bunch of drafts in Instagram. Some people will use something like there's Planoly, or there's a bunch of different apps where you can plan out your Instagram post in advance.
Mhm.
I don't use those, but I just make drafts in Instagram. And so one day I'll be like, oh, let me just publish this draft I've already made.
Okay.
Usually that's when I'm able to keep up posting every single day. But I think variety, and I could be wrong. I'm not a person who like knows the super in and outs of Instagram insights or anything like that. But to me, it seems like actually when I go for a long time without posting and then I post, it gets a little bit more engagement if I haven't posted in 3 or 4 days. And so I don't beat myself up about it. I'm like, if I can't post for 3 or 4 days, then it is what it is. That's fine. I'll just pick back up on it whenever I can. If I really feel like I've hit a lull, that's when I know, okay, it's time to make a new blog post. It's time to make a new blog post that I can start pulling captions from so I don't feel stuck anymore.
How often do you do your blog posts?
I don't really have a schedule for that either. Kind of social media does dictate it. When I feel like I've run out of things that I can point back to or helpful blog posts that I'm copying and pasting from, I'll make another blog post. Or sometimes I'll just, if I get a great idea, it probably is better for me to have a schedule. I'm not necessarily advocating that you don't have a schedule, but for me, I needed to live my life.
Yeah, it can be a challenge. You have to really balance it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and anything worth doing is worth half-assing. At least I'm making blog posts and posting on social media whenever I can.
Yes.
And not, just murdering myself trying to do it every single day without fail or anything like that. So I'd say I make a blog post probably like once every 2 weeks. And I should say I make a helpful blog post, a how-to blog post once every 2 weeks. But I also blog every single one of the sessions and weddings that I have.
Yes.
So those are more for my clients. I don't really consider those like coming up with blog posts. But so if we're counting all blog posts, I will probably do about maybe 1 to 2 a week. But helpful blog posts that are geared towards my ideal clients and not the clients I already have are probably about once every 2 weeks. Excellent. Or whenever I run out of content.
Okay. And there's always something that you can help them with. Like when you met, because to me, when you're explaining some of the things you're sharing about the wedding, for example, you sound like a wedding planner yourself. Like you're like more than the photographer, you have this deeper insight. So how do you also target working with event planners, or you specifically just focus on the brides as the end user?
So I focus on the brides, although I would love to start working with more and more wedding planners as much as possible, as much as I can. For where I'm at right now, my business is still relatively new, and my clients that I have right now are not in the like super, super high-end luxury market at this point. So a lot of them don't have wedding planners, or maybe they have day of coordinators. But either way, I want to establish myself as an expert in the industry. Even if they have a wedding planner, they don't even need the information I'm giving them. I want to be able to show them, I know my stuff. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing. Like it builds more trust in me, even if they won't necessarily use those specific services or anything. But I also do kind of like having that wedding planner like aspect to it, because I really try and encourage my brides to plan their wedding day timeline around the light and around photography. So the most important photos are in the best light. And I want them to trust that I'm thinking about their entire day. I'm not just thinking about the photos. I want them to trust that they can listen to me when I give them suggestions on how to plan their wedding day to get the best photos. So yeah, I kind of went back and forth on that too. Like, should I be leaning so much into the wedding like planning type of thing? But I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive. And if all it does is build trust, then that's great.
And it's value. You're adding a layer of value that you would not normally expect from your photographer. So I think that would set you apart as a competitive advantage right off the bat. That
right. I'm not just somebody who shows up the day of and you've talked to them like once before. I've helped you through this process.
Exactly. I think that's a whole other thing. And you can also, and while you're doing it, you can capture those moments and capture the memories of the process as well, right? That could be part of the package if they want it, I would imagine. And that gives you options to kind of build out, like you want a bigger package or a smaller package. So it gives you more of a product to sell as well. I would think that if someone wants to capture more. So it's really exciting to hear how something can expand or it can contract based on what someone needs.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to show them if you need everything, I got you.
you got them covered. So with COVID and the pandemic time, Savvy, how has that affected you with the photography, with the weddings, and what's coming up online for you?
So COVID was super strange time because pretty much all weddings just got completely like shut down.
Yeah.
So I actually did really well in the first stages of COVID because people still plan and, you know, they book in advance and everything. So they would just plan for their wedding after COVID. I would still get bookings and whatnot. Where I actually ran into trouble is I got a lot of my clients from being a preferred vendor at some of the venues in the area. Another reason why I like location. So like a couple would hire a venue and the vendor would say, this is the photographer we love to use. It would be me, you know? And some of the venues actually got shut down because of COVID. And that hurt me bad because that was a big source of like client referrals that just got shut down at the source. So once we decided to move and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to rebrand everything in Charlotte. In my mind, I was like, well, this is basically starting over my business from scratch. It basically is. I have to start completely over. None of the vendors I know are going to be there. None of the venues I know are going to be there. None of the clientele, referral sources, nothing is going to be there. I might as well just start from, I have to start from scratch over in Charlotte. So it's kind of hard to say how much did COVID affect me because a lot of the bookings could be attributed to the fact that I'm moving. And so I stopped marketing in my area like months ago. So I'm like, not sure if like COVID put a damper in that, or if it was the fact that I no longer was trying to book brides in the area that I always did that put a damper in that. So it's a little bit hard to say, but I think this upcoming year is going to be absolutely huge for weddings. Everyone who had their wedding postponed, everyone who had, I know a lot of people, I did a lot of weddings where they just wanted basically a tiny like elopement thing. And then they would have like a big reception after COVID was over. So I think those big receptions are going to be huge this year, even if the couple already got married in COVID. So yeah, it'll be pretty interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah,
it was just a weird time in my own life with everything going on, and COVID was just another wrench in the mix. I'm like,
yes, no, absolutely. And the whole idea that you are so forward looking, like you're looking way out in advance, weddings are planned a year in advance. So that actually helps with your whole strategizing. And I think I think there's lots of lessons to take from that as well. Even if you're working in a field where you don't have to plan as far out as that, the whole idea of thinking farther down the road is a good thing anyway.
right.
So, and you put it in a timeline that works for what you're doing, but it's very, I just think this has been so insightful. Savvy, you've shared so many amazing insights with us, not only on the photography, but for social media strategy, and wedding planning and for the brides and her lighting and her poses. So we really got a tremendous 360 here of your world and a lot that we can apply to our own. And it's really an exciting glimpse into what you're doing. So kudos to you, Miss Savvy.
Thank you. I love talking about this stuff. You can ask my husband. I just will talk about like business strategy, social media strategies.
Well, I think we may have to have a part two.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
We will do that. But thank you so much, Savvy, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for watching. For those who might be live and those who catch us on the replay, if you have any questions or comments, definitely please drop them in. And Savvy, how can people find you online? How can they follow you? What's your Instagram account?
So my Instagram account is Savvy Leigh Photography, Savvy, Savvy, and then Leigh is Leigh. It's my middle name. So Savvy Leigh Photography. It's a picture of me. I've got my cute little yellow smiley cup.
Very good.
Yeah, and I post lots of wedding planning tips. So
there you go. So if there are any brides or Sophie, and what's my guy's name again?
Declan. I know it's a weird one.
Any Declan's out there? Hey,
I kind of wanted to.
No, he's your man. Have Declan or Sophia's out there, please. Connect with Savvy. She's your girl. She'll get you all sorted for your big day. So that's so exciting. And everyone, again, tune in for our next Supercharged Sunday where we always have a wonderful guest. And also for Momentum Mondays happening tomorrow morning, 7:45 a.m. Eastern Time. I spend a few minutes getting our week started with some insights And also, if you haven't signed up for my Supercharged Weekly newsletter, it's time to sign up at emilymchugh.com. Sign up, and you'll get to know what we're doing and get you business tips and strategies to help your business. So until next time, stay supercharged, and thank you so much, Savvy.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, hold on.